In a driving rain, Nefertiti Helm and Ernest Barksdale headed to the Department of Motor Vehicles in downtown Milwaukee. Neither Nefertiti, who walks with a cane because she has lupus, nor her boyfriend Ernest has a photo ID, and they'll need one to vote in next week's presidential primary. Starting this year, the path to the polling place for many Wisconsin voters includes a stop at the DMV,
trying to obtain an ID to vote,
which has severely cut its hours across the state. They filled out forms, had their pictures taken, and waited to hear how they would fare.
You want this ID for free, so you will check yes.
Okay.
All with the help of community organizer Anita Johnson. Wisconsin's strict new voter ID requirement was signed into law in 2011 by Republican Governor Scott Walker. It's part of a package of election law changes the Republican-controlled legislature approved along party lines. Implementation of the law had been delayed by the courts, and then last year the U.S. Supreme Court allowed the law to take effect even as a challenge to part of it moves forward. Opponents say as many as 350,000 otherwise eligible voters may be disenfranchised, many of them poor and people of color.
So, as we just heard in that report from John Yang, some really, I guess, disturbing repercussions from the change in their voter ID law. And you can comment on that, but I also want to ask you about the fact that the polls, David, are showing both front runners, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, running behind. What would it mean if they were to lose in Wisconsin?
Well, they're front runners with amazing differences or disadvantages. Usually at this stage, if you've won as much as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have won, then everyone's rallying around you. You're relaxed, you're happy, you're cruising. That's not happening this time, and mostly because they have significant weaknesses.
Here's Hillary Clinton Thursday. After she was confronted with accusations she's taken money from the fossil fuel industry.
I am so sick. I am so sick of the Sanders campaign lying about me. I'm sick.
Hillary Clinton showed one of those rare flashes of anger yesterday. She was stopped by a protester after a speech who asked her about the charge by the Bernie Sanders camp that she is taking a lot of money from the fossil fuel industry, and she said they're lying about it.
Totally bogus charge against Secretary Clinton. There's open secrets that records all contributions and the source thereof and the occupations of the donors. Reported 1/100th of 1% of Clinton's campaign funds and PAC funds and as well have come from the fossil fuel industry. Bernie Sanders, 4/100ths of 1% have come from people in the field. So it's a totally unfair. I mean, charge. You can raise questions too close to lobbyists or whatever else, and no, it was a legitimate reaction on her part. I think it has to be said in Bernie's favor. If in fact he does win Wisconsin, that will have been 6 out of 7 of the contests he's won.
He just won 3 caucuses.
He did. I mean, you know, he's won everything since Arizona.
By the way, he stood by today again when he was asked about this fossil fuel contribution. He said we're telling the truth. It's right.
It's inaccurate and unfair. I mean, it really is. And I'm surprised at the Sanders campaign. I mean, it's because they haven't done this in the past.
But David, I mean, on paper, Hillary Clinton is still the front runner. But Bernie Sanders raised what, $45 million last month in March. Right. He continues to build delegates. He may win Wisconsin. What is this? New York. What is this headed for?
It's headed for New York. I mean, she had a huge lead in New York a couple of weeks ago, which has now dwindled. It's still in the double digits, so it's a significant lead. But she loses the state where she was the senator.
Yeah.
That I think would change everyone's eyes. Up until that point, I don't think it does. Sanders, we know he has a strong constituency. It's going to show up at caucuses. Wisconsin has a strong progressive tradition going back 100 years. It's his kind of place. Right. And so I don't think winning Wisconsin necessarily turns him into a more credible candidate.
But I disagree. I mean, he was 50 points behind in Wisconsin a year ago to Secretary Clinton. I mean, you know, this is a victory. Everybody's on the ballot in Wisconsin. There's no Democratic ballot, Republican ballot. You can go in and vote for Ted Cruz or vote for Bernie Sanders, whoever. I mean, it's a significant victory. And if New York, if he does win, I mean, make no mistake about it.
So 30 seconds, Hillary Clinton keeps at it and just keeps on letting him get under her skin? I mean, what happens between them?
What's her message? What has she added? She's a paint-by-numbers Democratic candidate with the same policy planks as every other Democratic candidate. She's shown no creativity, no way to fill the void to counter what he offers.
why do you want to be president of the United States, other than it's something on your resume and I'm prepared for it and this is it? What is the vision? I mean, Bernie Sanders, to his credit, is the one candidate in the race with a message. You know, it's a message that's energized an awful lot of people.
To be continued.
What is the impact should he win in Wisconsin? He's favored in Wisconsin. He's certainly dug in a whole lot more. Sure. Will that give him the momentum? Could he narrow the gap and take New York away? Or narrow it so much that it's really a Pyrrhic victory here in New York for someone who was twice elected as the senator?
No, I don't think he can narrow the gap materially and pledge delegates in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a state that favors him. It is much less diverse than most of the states we compete in Democratic primaries. It's got a lower population of African Americans, a very small population of Latinos. We've done very well in building a diverse coalition, which is why we've won far more primary elections than Senator Sanders has, and compiled a bigger net delegate lead in those primaries by a lot than he has. The key here in Wisconsin is to, you know, compete hard, try to win this state. But in either way this state comes out, I think it's close enough. There isn't going to be a big shift in the 230 or plus pledged delegate advantage that Hillary Clinton has right now.
She does seem to be increasingly annoyed. She was obviously frustrated at the Greenpeace activist who approached her on the rope line. She is increasingly frustrated, and there's obviously tension between the two of them at his ability to keep coming after her. He's raising a ton of money. He's going to be in this until the end, and he's going after her on issue after issue. And it is getting more personal the way they're targeting her.
Well, I've been saying that for more than a month, if you recall, and I got huge pushback from the Sanders campaign. Of course we're not. But look, that's unfortunate because they do have some differences on issues. And the attack, by the way, that he's been making on her, taking money from the fossil fuel industry, he got 3 Pinocchios on that from the Washington Post. The New York Times said mostly false. So I think, you know, if they're going to keep leveling attacks that are personal and wrong, that's not the kind of campaign he said he was going to run.
I'm very proud of the campaign that Senator Sanders and I have run because we've run it on issues compared to insults. And I'm really excited that he's attracted so many people, particularly young people, into this contest. And again, you have to look at the broader perspective. We've won some, he's won some, but I have 2.5 million more votes than he does. And I have a very significant lead in delegates.
Now, her campaign manager, Robbie Mook, put out a note this morning saying that you have to struggle to explain your path to the nomination. Can you rebut or explain or respond to them?
Here is our path to the nomination. First of all, we have extraordinary momentum. We have won 6 out of the last 7 caucuses and primaries. We'll see what happens today in Wisconsin. We'll see what happens shortly in Wyoming. And we have won all of those elections up to now by landslide victories. We started off in the South where we did very, very badly. Secretary Clinton picked up a lot of delegates. But now we're out of the South and we're heading into progressive parts of this country. I think we have a chance, an excellent chance, to win in New York. I think when we get out west in Oregon and California, I think we're going to do very, very well. I think we can win the pledged delegates. And I'll tell you something else. As I think Democrats and superdelegates look at the political landscape, what they are seeing is in poll after poll, Bernie Sanders does a lot better against Donald Trump than does Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary and I absolutely agree that the worst thing for this country would be to see a Donald Trump or some right-wing Republican in the White House. And I think that when superdelegates look at the reality of which candidate is the strongest against Republicans, I think you're going to see a lot of those superdelegates coming over to us. Last CNN poll had us 20 points ahead of Donald Trump. Here in Wisconsin, a battleground state, we were 19 points ahead of him. And in both cases, the margin was significantly greater than Secretary Clinton's.
Do you have to defeat her in Wisconsin by a big margin in order to have enough momentum going forward to New York and enough to validate the campaign?
Andrea, in all due respect to the media, I've been asked that question in every single state that we've been in. In Iowa, do you have to win? In New Hampshire, do you have to win? There are 50 states in this country, and we want to win as many of them as we can. Wisconsin is very important, actually. There are a good number of delegates here. Our hope is that we can do well. But then we're going to New York State, and that's where there are a whole lot more delegates. And we are feeling really good. We had a rally just a few days ago in the South Bronx. We had 18,000 people coming out. We're going to be doing events throughout the city of New York, throughout upstate New York, and we're feeling pretty good. So I think, Andrea, given the fact that when we began this campaign, my candidacy was considered to be a fringe candidacy. We were 60 points behind Secretary Clinton. Polls now coming out have us 1 point behind, 1 point up. We have come a long way.
With our victory tonight in Wisconsin, we have now won 7 out of 8 of the last caucuses and primaries. And we have won almost all of them with overwhelming landslide numbers. What momentum is about is that at a time in contemporary politics when every major candidate has a super PAC, we have said no to super PACs, said no to the billionaires who fund those super PACs. And what we have done is, in an unprecedented manner in American history, we have, up to this point in the campaign, received over 6 million individual campaign contributions. Anyone here know what the average contribution is? That's exactly right. Smart crowd. $27. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Welcome back to CNN's coverage of the Wisconsin primary. It wasn't long ago that a guy named Jeff Weaver retired from politics, opened up a comic book store in Fairfax, Virginia, called Victory Comics. Then he got a call from his old boss, Bernie Sanders, about joining him and running his presidential campaign. And now here we are, several contests later. Bernie Sanders has won 7 out of the last 8 contests, including Democrats abroad. Jeff Weaver's here. Not bad for a guy who just a few months ago was separating the Daredevils from the Teen Titans. Here you are. Congratulations on your big victory again in Wisconsin.
Also the Senator's victory, really. But
the Senator's victory, but also the campaign manager gets some credit. John King has some questions for you about the map going forward, so we have an actual map here.
Oh, we do.
And it's like Oprah. You get to take it with you. Okay. Just take it with you when you go home.
But I want the car. I also want the guy.
Everybody wants the car. All right, so let's start by Wisconsin tonight, a good win. Looks like you're going to win somewhere 55-45. If that happens, net gain of 8 tonight. You might get 9. Right now, the Senator Sanders, if you look, he's 56-43. You might do a little better than that. So that would get you here in the pledged delegate map.
Right.
The question is, you know the math. You got to win. You're going into New York next. Can you win New York?
Well, we're going to go to Wyoming next.
Wyoming next.
We're going to win in Wyoming.
Okay.
And we're going to go to New York. New York's going to be a tough fight. There's no doubt about it. The Secretary has a lot of, political support in New York. But I think we can win it.
You can win it. All right. Well, let's say for the sake of argument, you win it 55-45.
Well, that's...
That would be nice.
From your lips to God's ears.
You think if you do win, it's going to be 51-49 probably?
Well, maybe closer. Maybe closer.
I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be nice because you know the skepticism.
Sure,
I'm not doing this to be a jerk. You know the skepticism.
No. I got it.
You know the skepticism that can you make it up?
Sure.
Okay. And so when you go through all these states, I'm going to go to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Secretary Clinton thinks she's going to win that.
Okay.
I'm going to give it to Bernie Sanders. Right, 55-45. You start to pick up some delegate math there.
Yep.
But even look, you're still, she's getting under the Democratic Party rules. It's helped you in states you've lost. You get 40-something%.
Absolutely.
But okay, we go forward. Can Bernie Sanders win Connecticut?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of guys that work on Wall Street live in Connecticut.
That's right. No, I know that. A lot of other people in Connecticut too. Hey, a lot of guys on Wall Street are voting for Bernie Sanders.
We're just having fun here. There we go. So I'll give you that one, 55-45. All right, state of New Jersey?
Absolutely.
All right, so you're on a roll. We're being generous. I know the Clinton supporters watching are already mad at me.
Their heads are
They've been mad at you for a long time. Now they're really mad at me. But here we go. We'll give it to you 55-45. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. I started my career in the great state of Rhode Island. Bernie Sanders win there.
Absolutely.
A lot of great blue-collar people. All right, 55-45. Now, we can go on and on and on through all these.
Right.
I'm going to do this for the sake of argument.
Sure.
I'm going to give them all to you, okay?
Right.
This is like The Price is Right or whatever it is. If we give it all to you at 55-45,
right,
you almost catch her, but you come up a little short. So obviously, especially in some of these big states where there are a couple hundred delegates at stake, you got to win by bigger than that, right?
Yeah,
you don't dispute that.
Well, and in some smaller states, as you know, we have won a lot of these states in the last couple of weeks by, 60%, 70%, 80% in Alaska, and so yes, in some of these states we're going to have a much bigger margin.
Let's just show what that means when you do that, though. In a state like Alaska, it's only 20 delegates, so you win huge, but you get a net gain of 10. You need better than that.
No, but look, and as we saw in Nevada, in many of these caucus states, actually, Senator Sanders is going to end up with more delegates because as we go through the iterative caucus process, he's going to end up netting many more delegates than what he gets initially.
All right, so now I'm going to go back a few on you. I'm just going to play, since we're playing devil's advocate, let's assume actually Hillary Clinton wins the state of Pennsylvania and you come in second because she thinks she's going to do that. Okay, I'm going to say, just for the sake of argument, that she wins New York. Maybe she doesn't win it by this margin. This goes back to 55-45. But if you get, this is even, I'm still giving you a bunch of states, and the Clinton people watching are saying there's no way New Jersey, there's no way West Virginia. But if this happens, so I guess the question is, in terms of pledged delegates, and I haven't done that little trick where I bring out the superdelegates.
Right.
Because obviously, if you do something like this, some of those superdelegates are going to change their mind. Some. The question is how many. But how do you change the map so that you catch her? Not just get close to her, but catch her.
Right. Well, in some of these states, we're going to have bigger margins. And the truth is, it's going to be many of the smaller states. I mean, you mentioned West Virginia. There's polls, and it showed Senator Sanders 20 points ahead in West Virginia right now. We haven't campaigned a bit.
But it's 37 delegates. I mean, even if you win 60-40, you're not making up big math.
No, it's not. You're never making up big math. It's slow and steady wins the race. And this is the number right here, of course, 2383. None of these scenarios shows either person getting to 2383. So we're going to an open convention. Everybody's talking about a Republican open convention. The Democrats are going to an open convention.
You sincerely believe that?
Absolutely.
Do you think that you can make the argument successfully to superdelegates that they should change their vote, even if Hillary Clinton enters the convention ahead in the pledged delegates?
Look, this is what superdelegates have to grapple with. They want to win. Many of these people are elected officials, party insiders. At the end of the day, they want the candidate who's going to be able to beat the Republicans. And the polling consistently shows that's Bernie Sanders. He obviously has the momentum here on the second half of the primaries and caucuses. And so I think that their desire to win, as he continues to demonstrate that he's the strongest candidate, I think will be very powerful with superdelegates.
The bigger picture issue around superdelegates in the Democratic primary has been whether they are completely ridiculous and absurd, particularly in the wake of DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz effectively admitting that superdelegates are meant to prevent activist candidates from running against establishment Democrats. That's the big picture issue. A more micro issue is whether specific superdelegates with conflicts of interest should be barred from participating in the primary process. And one such superdelegate is a guy named Bill Clinton, former president and husband of current Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton. There have been more and more calls for Bill Clinton to recuse himself, especially after more than 6 New York State superdelegates insisted that they were going to support Hillary Clinton no matter what the results of New York State's primary end up being. But Bill Clinton is saying no, that he can be fair. He said late last week that his vote at the 2008 Democratic National Convention shows that he's willing to back candidates other than Hillary Clinton. And it is true, back in 2008, Hillary Clinton was also a candidate, and Bill Clinton, as a superdelegate, cast a vote for President Barack Obama. He said, last time I did what my candidate asked, I voted for Barack Obama. Now, the big difference, I don't know that this is a great defense, because in 2008, there was no delegate vote. Hillary Clinton actually interrupted the roll call vote with a motion that Barack Obama be selected in a sort of call for unity. I'll remind you what that was like. This is Hillary on the floor of the 2008 DNC.
Madam Secretary. Madam Secretary, I move that the convention suspend the procedural rules and suspend the further conduct of the roll call vote. All votes cast by the delegates will be counted, and that I move Senator Barack Obama of Illinois be selected by this convention by acclamation as the nominee of the Democratic Party for President of the United States.
Yeah, so anyway, that whole charade, just to remind you that Bill Clinton's vote for Barack Obama in 2008 was not some big controversial thing, that there was no actual full vote and the entire thing was suspended. Depending on how Bernie Sanders does in the primaries remaining this month, we could have a drastically different situation this year. But I have to tell you, I'm not worried about Bill Clinton. The Clintons have been team players, and although there's no doubt that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton will do whatever is reasonably possible to support the candidacy of Hillary Clinton this year, I actually am not worried about Bill Clinton being a superdelegate at the micro level. No doubt, lots of questions about the superdelegate system at the macro level, but I think this is a lot to much ado about nothing.
Yes, why should we be pointing the finger at Bill Clinton? It's not irrelevant, but it's pretty close. We should be pointing the finger at Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
And the broader system.
Right.
No doubt about it.
Let us whisper of another dream. Okay, so the last time we whispered of a dream, it was that Arizona would be the last state Hillary Clinton would win. Now, that's preposterous. Has she won a state since? Oh, she hasn't. She hasn't.
In fact, she lost another one she had already previously won.
That's true. That's true. Nevada flipped. You know, we keep saying 6 out of 7 before tonight. So Bernie Sanders wins tonight. Now it's 7 out of 8 since the March 15th debacle. Let's be honest about that. Okay, 7 out of 8. But actually, it's 8 out of 9.
Yes.
Because Nevada flipped in the meanwhile. And she had won the voting, to be fair, but her delegates didn't show up. And they, caucus, your delegates, after you have won them, have to actually show up and get counted. They didn't get counted because they didn't show up, so he wound up having more delegates than her in Nevada, and so that state, I mean, you want to talk about an enthusiasm gap when your delegates don't even bother showing up.
I was told half of her delegates didn't show up.
Right. So now he puts Nevada back on the board, right, for him, and so they're going to vote in Wyoming. It's a caucus. It's white. It's weird. It's next to Vermont. So he's very likely to win it in gigantic percentages. So that's on Saturday. So then all of a sudden it's 9 out of 10. And so is it conceivable that he could win New York? It's certainly conceivable. If he wins her quote-unquote home state, which she was the senator for. She's the senator from New York. What if Arizona's the last state she wins? You have to understand something. The South is done.
Done.
Every single state in the South has voted. Every single one. There's nothing coming to the rescue. If anything's going to come to the rescue, it's going to be New York for Hillary Clinton. It could be Pennsylvania and New Jersey, but if he wins New York, and then he's got some time to pick up votes in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Earlier in the show, we talked about how he's closing her lead in California. What if Arizona was the last seat she won?
Bernie Sanders' campaign is targeting the New York crowd as well, releasing a striking new campaign ad today, once again featuring Erica Garner, the daughter of Eric Garner.
This is everything that I have, my family. I got to see my dad die on national TV. They don't know what they took from us. People are dying. We need a president that's going to talk about it. I believe Bernie Sanders is a protester. He's not scared to go up against the criminal justice system. He's not scared. That's why I'm from Bernie.
So joining me here is Brian Fallon, press secretary for the Hillary Clinton campaign. Brian, a lot to unpack here. First of all, why is she in New York and not in Wisconsin? What are your expectations from the Wisconsin vote?
Well, she spent 3 days in the last week in Wisconsin. We have contested that state right up through the finish. I think that it is a state. I think that it's a state that somewhat favors Senator Sanders, and some of the public polling in recent days has reflected that. It's an open primary. He's consistently fared well in open primary formats. It's a state that is very progressive, has a large number of college-age voters. So I think that Senator Sanders has the wind at his back in Wisconsin today, but we'll see how the results go. I do think that the New York primary is going to loom very large for both candidates, and that's why you've seen both candidates already campaigning in the state for the better part of the last week. You're going to have essentially a 3-week campaign focused on New York State, and the reason for that is because New York is the first of 4 of the remaining delegate-rich states where if Senator Sanders is really going to turn this thing around, he's got to have to do it in New York. New York is a must-win for Senator Bernie Sanders.
And it's also a must-win for Hillary Clinton, who represented the state in the Senate and is an adopted New Yorker. I mean, it would be a real psychological blow. She's mathematically so far ahead.
Right.
And numerically, it is hard for him to catch up with pledged delegates. But if she doesn't win New York, that does open a pathway to him, at least for the other mid-Atlantic states.
Oh, we think we're going to win New York. We think it's going to be a competitive contest because New York Democrats are a very progressive lot as well. Senator Sanders is from here. He's got the support of the Working Families Party, which is an important player here in New York politics. So he's going to run very competitively.
Here's what the Sanders campaign put out after you finally agreed, the 2 campaigns finally agreed, not you personally, on a debate. We hope the debate will be worth the inconvenience for thousands of New Yorkers, emphasis mine, who were planning to attend our rally on Thursday, but will have to change their schedules to accommodate Secretary Clinton's jam-packed, high-dollar, coast-to-coast schedule of fundraising all over the country. Your comment on that?
We were taken aback by that. I thought it was unnecessary by Mr. Briggs, the spokesperson for the Sanders campaign. I think that in these remaining weeks of this contest, it will be the obligation of both campaigns to conduct themselves in an issue-oriented way.
Mr. Weaver, thank you so much for being with us. Congratulations tonight.
Hey, Rachel, how you doing?
Great, thank you. Let me ask, obviously you had been confident heading into Wisconsin. You spent a lot of money trying to win Wisconsin, did a lot of rallies with your candidate there. Is the result that you're seeing thus far in terms of the margin and where you're getting the vote for basically in accord with your expectations?
Yeah, in fact, it's a little bit higher than our expectations. We're performing a little bit better than we did in our final internal polls. But that's often the case. The senator, when he goes to a state and talks to people face-to-face, to large numbers of people in the state, he typically moves a lot of voters very quickly at the end of an election. So this is very much in line with what we've seen in other states where the senator actively campaigns, within the last few days of the election. So we're very gratified about tonight. This makes 7 of the last 8 contests that Senator Sanders has won. Starting with Democrats abroad and sweeping all across the country now. We were told we couldn't win big primary states, and of course it looks like he's won by double-digit margin in Wisconsin. He won Michigan. So he's winning in caucuses, he's winning in primaries. There's a caucus in Wyoming this weekend, and then we're on to New York.
We heard the senator himself talking about the importance of that New York primary coming up. I got to ask you about the New York Daily News. The headline on the front page of the New York Daily News tomorrow is tough. Bernie's Sandy Hook shame callously defends gun makers against Newtown kin lawsuit. Now, this is about the senator's long-held position about the liability of gun makers and gun sellers to be sold by victims. To be sued by victims of gun violence. Is this a big misunderstanding? Is the Daily News headline here accurate? What's the campaign response to this?
No, it's certainly not accurate. And as you know, Rachel, Senator Sanders is co-sponsoring a bill that would substantially narrow that 2006 legislation. As he stated many times, his concern when that legislation was originally came up was about small stores in rural areas that support a hunting community. Certainly, he does not support people engaged, companies engaged in a reckless conduct that puts guns or ammunition in the hands of people who should not have it. So he is certainly in favor of making sure that anybody who's a bad actor is punished. But anybody who's not a bad actor should not be punished. So, this issue of guns certainly is an issue that the Secretary's campaign likes to raise a lot. But the truth of the matter is that she's been all over the map on this over the years. Her current campaign takes money from the gun lobby. Gun lobbyists actually ran a fundraiser for her in D.C. on the 21st of March. So, you know, it's a little bit disingenuous again. It's just like Wall Street or the fossil fuel industry or what have you. They say one thing, but they're taking money with their other hand.
Well, Jeff, let me just push back on you a little bit on that, because
Sure,
this is not the Clinton campaign. This is the New York Daily News, having had a long conversation with Senator Sanders directly. On Friday, they published the transcript of that last night. This is their takeaway from that discussion tomorrow. This is not an ambush by the Clinton campaign. This is in response to him. I think anybody would reasonably say fumbling that answer to the Daily News in terms of whether or not specifically the Sandy Hook families should be allowed to proceed with the lawsuits that they are in fact bringing against the people who they hold responsible for the deaths of their first graders. I mean, is the senator, was he wrong in what he said to the Daily News, or was that his position that those lawsuits should not go forward?
Well, the position that he has articulated is that when a big company or a big store supplies ammunition or guns in a way that someone reasonably should know is not correct, that they should be held accountable. I think he has said that over and over again, and that's why he's supporting this legislation. He's co-sponsoring legislation in the Senate to do just that, to make sure that we narrow the impact of that 2006 law. As I said, his concern at the time was, you know, he comes from a rural state, to make sure that small stores that support the hunting community in those states would remain open. But obviously, if they're bad actors, they need to be cut out.
Jeff Weaver, Bernie Sanders campaign manager. This New York contest and Wyoming and the other contests before it are going to be a lot of fun to cover. We look forward to talking to you in the days ahead, sir. Thanks for your time tonight.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So, Emily, you look at the delegate count now. Clinton, 1,743. Sanders, though, 1,056. I mean, he's moving on up.
Well, it certainly is defined the expectations from the beginning. People didn't really think this would be much of a race. But he's come out with some very, to give him credit, he has some very clear and concise messages. They don't vary very much, but they are actually really what a lot of people are looking to hear, which is talking about very strongly about income inequality, rallying against big banks and talking about influence in politics, money in politics. People really do, that does resonate with people. And so, he has done better than people have expected. That doesn't mean that he's really on a very realistic path to actually winning the nomination. He would have to win 58% of all delegates moving forward, which seems pretty unlikely, especially given the states that are upcoming that are more diverse, have closed primaries. It just seems pretty unlikely he'll actually run for the nomination.
What stuck out to me, Chuck, in our exit polling is last-minute deciders. A majority of them went to Bernie Sanders. Clearly, he's got the momentum, but what does that tell you about maybe his ability to change the situations in the states coming up?
Well, the one thing that we know about this election cycle is that it's ever-changing. I've been doing politics for 25 years, and I've never really seen anything like it. People who knew Bernie Sanders in the polling 3 months ago knew he was down 20 points in Wisconsin, and to have the victory he had last night, Emily's exactly right. It is an uphill battle. The math is against him to a certain degree, but unexpected things are happening every day in this election. Nobody would have thought that Bernie Sanders would have been this far into the race and have won 7 out of the last 8. We got to give him his campaign credit, but also Hillary Clinton was a senator from New York. The states coming up, we'll see who favors who, but right now the momentum is definitely in his favor.
Yeah, Emily, New York coming up, 247 delegates at stake there for the Democrats. Obviously, Hillary Clinton is ahead by a few points now, but it's still pretty close. Does that totally change the game if Bernie Sanders could win New York?
It certainly would be a big deal. New York delegates themselves are about 6% of the overall delegates needed in the race. So it's a big prize regardless. But symbolically in this race, particularly, I think it's a very big win for anybody who wins both in the Democratic or Republican sides. There have been so many unexpected things about this election, but one of them is that New York has actually played a really important role.
All right, so let's take a look at what Wisconsin means to you last night. With all the speculation going on, do you believe today that you will get to the magic number before the convention, the magic number of delegates?
Yes, I do. And I think that Senator Sanders had a good night last night, and I congratulated him. But if you look at the numbers, I'm still considerably ahead in both the popular vote and, most importantly, the delegate count. So I'm feeling very good about where we are, and we're excited to be campaigning in New York, and then it'll be on to Pennsylvania and other states.
Now, when you say, yes, we will reach the number before the convention, do you think that that will mean that you'll need superdelegates? Because the Sanders campaign essentially says that's dirty pool. The superdelegates are an artificial help to you.
Well, you know, he knew what the rules were when he decided to run for president, but most importantly, I think we will reach whatever number is required. We're going to continue to acquire delegates and add to our total. I have more delegates than he does in a broader margin than President Obama had over me at this time in 2008. So I think we're doing well. But what's really important, Chris, is we stay focused on the issues. We've tried to run an issue-oriented campaign, but we have some serious differences. We're going to be exploring those, whether it's how Dodd-Frank actually works. If you're concerned about income inequality and holding the banks accountable, you have to know how it works and what you have to do to make it work. And I have the best plan to add to that. When it comes to guns, we have a really serious difference. And I was appalled that Senator Sanders said that he, really didn't see any reason for the parents of children massacred at Sandy Hook in Connecticut to be able to try to sue the gun makers. I just absolutely disagree. And so there's a lot we're going to keep talking about, and I think that's what the election should be focused on.
Waste of time. You guys, why does Bernie Sanders drink skim milk? He hates the 1%.
So right now, the race comes to New York, April 19th. And immediately, there was this New York Daily News meeting. Juan, you were at it. The transcript has been released. Hillary Clinton has sent it to her supporters. What did Ryan Grimm write in the Huffington Post? A notion is rapidly crystallizing among national media. Bernie Sanders majorly bungled an interview with the editorial board of New York Daily News. CNN just said several times during the interview, Sanders expressed uncertainty over facts, said he couldn't give a proper answer to a question because he didn't have all the relevant information, or simply stated, I don't know. CNN said in one exchange, Sanders acknowledged he wasn't sure exactly how he intended to break up the big banks, a proposal that's been a centerpiece of his Wall Street reform agenda. A Washington Post says this New York Daily News interview was pretty close to a disaster for Bernie Sanders. But not everyone agrees. Juan, you raced out of here on Friday because you were racing back to the New York Daily News to attend and question Bernie Sanders at this New York Daily News editorial board meeting.
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't get that impression, to tell you the truth. The editorial board is notorious, especially our editorial page editor, Arthur Brown, for his laser-like one question after another, and he bombarded, and several of others of us also asked questions. I overall thought that Bernie Sanders handled the exchange very well, and I think that there were a few places where he stumbled, but I was amazed at his ability to parry the questions that were thrown at him, and to basically, for instance, bluntly say when he was asked about the Israeli-Palestinian situation that Israel needed to withdraw from the illegal settlements in Palestinian territory, which I was astounded that he was quite frank and clear on his position, while at the same time saying he would do everything possible as president to negotiate peace and security for Israel in an overall settlement. And I think that he did stumble a little bit when he was pressed on how he would break up some of the too big to fail banks. He clearly did not have that down pat.
Who would have the jurisdiction?
All right, who would have the jurisdiction? And but overall, I thought his performance was excellent.
Can I say a couple things here? New York City is the war to settle the score inside the Democratic Party. The Clinton forces understand there is a rebellion in this party. Under ordinary circumstances, it would already be over because the big donors would have taken the checks back. There are no big checks. This is a people's movement. They are going to have to bury this movement in New York City, and they know it. You're going to see a vetting of Bernie Sanders like you've never seen. You're going to see the mainstream media go after him. Now there's blood in the water on specifics. They're going to go after him on specific, way beyond anything any candidate has had to address. And people are going to have to, he's going to have to step up his game. You can't, write excuses for people. He's got to be able to answer those tough questions. But also, if you want for this Democratic Party to take progressive causes seriously, now is the time to speak out and get engaged. And for African Americans in particular, I want to say something. We are the only part of this so-called Obama coalition that has to give not 50% of our vote, not 60, not 70, not 80, not 90, but 92% of our vote in every presidential election in order for Democrats to win. So we are beyond a base vote. We are the decisive vote. If we give 85% of our vote to the Democrats, Republicans win. And so we deserve to have a full hearing on all the issues that affect us and hear from both candidates. And all of the history needs to be on the table to be vetted.
You know,
for
it's
both
interesting.
candidates.
I went up to that South Bronx rally that Bernie Sanders had last week. First time a presidential candidate had been there in a very long time. It was electric. 16, 18, 20,000 people were there. When he raises money, he's speaking directly to the camera or to the people and just saying, hey, send me $3, whatever his average is, $27. When Hillary Clinton raises money, she has to come off the campaign trail. Like last night, the big Wisconsin primary, she was at a fundraiser, and that's done behind closed doors.
Yeah, and part of the opportunity that we have up until now, you could say to any candidate, why are you taking money from big people? Well, everybody does it. If I don't take money from the big people, I'll be obliterated. I have to do this. Guess what? You now have an example of somebody who didn't do it and who's been able to show real strength and results.
The latest is Rachel Maddow. I mean, my God, all of a sudden, Rachel has this love affair with Hillary and is ignoring the issues that progressives, who put her there, by the way, are interested in talking about.
Well, you know what's very interesting is that very point you just brought up there. It's not just the establishment within the Democratic Party. It's the establishment press. And that's not just the corporate media. We have all kinds of independent, allegedly independent media outlets out there right now who have become just shills for Hillary Clinton because either they worked, for a campaign of hers, or they worked for her Senate staff, or they worked for her husband. These are establishment groups that are out there attacking Bernie Sanders, spouting off this pro-Hillary stuff. But the average people, the readers who go to their websites, don't understand that they are from the Clinton administration.
Yeah,
they are Washington.
They are. That is misunderstood. Some of these independents, you say, oh, well, surely, this organization that I'm reading, and they're good on most of our issues. They don't understand how connected and how long-standing those Hillary connections have been. Which brings me to this next issue. This position that Hillary's taken, that she's sick of the left, that she's tired of the left, that she wants to get in the face of people who say that they're on the left and point her finger and raise hell with them when they ask a tough question. What has happened here? I mean, how are they so out of touch that they don't understand the left is what put Obama in power? Even though he absolutely has ignored the same people that put him in power, are they going to do it again?
They absolutely are. And Hillary is sick of the Democratic Party. But so is Bill Clinton. Remember a couple years ago when he was talking with his Wall Street buddies, he said, look, we could hand them Lloyd Blankfein's head on a platter and it still wouldn't be enough for them. They're sick of the progressive base of the Democratic Party. And they're not making that, hidden anymore. They're just coming right out and doing it because Hillary knows, look, I've kind of got this in the bag, maybe. So I'm just going to say and do whatever the hell I want. Now, when she got in that woman's face and said, I'm sick of the Bernie Sanders campaign spreading these lies, that was a lie. We know for a fact that out of every presidential candidate that has run this entire season, Hillary Clinton has received the third most amount of money in direct contributions from oil and gas industries. Now, when you factor in how much those groups have bundled for her and how much that the oil and gas sponsored super PACs have funneled into her campaign, Hillary Clinton has received more money than any other person running for president from the oil and gas industry. First time in history that person is a Democrat.
First of all, here's what Hillary said on clip number 1, guys. This is what Hillary said on Morning Joe this morning about Bernie.
I think what you saw in the New York Daily News raises questions for voters, and the front page of the news, which is one of my biggest contrasts with Senator Sanders, that he would place gun manufacturers' rights and immunity from liability against the parents of the children killed at Sandy Hook is just unimaginable.
Right. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. So, this email that I got from the Clinton campaign, it says, You know, check out the entire unedited interview below and see for yourself. Then share it on Twitter or Facebook or by forwarding this email. So, you know, they want this shared. So let me just read it to you. It's pretty straightforward stuff. The question was, so speaking on New York and issues important to New York, and speaking of death, after the Oregon Community College shootings, you promised a comprehensive gun control agenda. When are we going to see that? And he said, Bernie says, well, I've talked about it. You've seen it. What the agenda is very similar to where President Obama is. President Obama said at the Oregon speech, with a great deal of emotion, that he thought that this is an issue that's never going to be permanently solved. Nobody can guarantee that some lunatic is not going to pick up a gun today and kill people, but we have to do the best we can to prevent those kinds of killings. And what we do, in my view, is significantly strengthen and expand the instant background check. What we do is do away with the gun show loophole, where people now are buying guns from unlicensed dealers. What we do is we do away with the straw man provision, where you can buy a gun legally and then sell it to someone who's a criminal. So I support pretty much the president's agenda. So then they said, well, there's currently a case waiting to be ruled on in Connecticut. The victims of the Sandy Hook massacre are looking for the right to sue for damages the manufacturers of the weapons. Do you think that's something that should be expanded? And Sanders says, do I think the victims of a crime with a gun should be able to sue the manufacturer? Is that your question? Daily News, correct. Sanders, no, I don't. And he says, now, you know, in the same sense that if you're a gun dealer and you sell me a gun and I go out and I kill him, he gestures to someone else in the room, do I think that the gun dealer should be sued for selling me a legal product that he misused? The reporters both shake their heads no. He said, but I do believe that gun manufacturers and gun deals should be able to be sued when they should know that guns are going into the hands of the wrong people. So if somebody walks in and says, I'd like 10,000 rounds of ammunition, you know, well, you might be suspicious about that. So I think there are grounds for these suits, but not if you sell me a legal product. But you're really saying, and then they wander into this discussion of AR-15s, and he says, so to answer your question, I do not believe then, and I don't believe now, that those guns, he's talking about AR-15s, assault weapons, should be sold in America. They are designed for killing people. If you're questioning me, will I vote to ban assault weapons in the United States? Yeah, I will. So, I'm a little confused. The Clinton campaign is pushing out, Bernie Sanders blew an interview with the Daily News, and I'm not sure, you know, unless you want to twist this into everything that he just said means that he doesn't give a damn about the Sandy Hook people, about even the rights of the Sandy Hook people. I don't get it. And in fact, Ryan Grimm over at Huffington Post, you know, is pushing back on this. He says a close look at the transcript suggests the media be getting worked up over nothing. In fact, in several instances, it's the Daily News editors who are bungling the facts in an interview designed to show that Sanders doesn't understand the fine points of policy. In questions about breaking up big banks, the powers of the Treasury Department, and drone strikes, the editors were simply wrong on the details. But, you know, that doesn't matter. We can still criticize Bernie in emails and the media, and CNN is doing it right now on MSNBC, the Chiron Clinton. Sanders hasn't done his homework.
And let me bring in now Jeff Weaver. He's Bernie Sanders' campaign manager. We promised that we would try to get him on the line, and we do have him. Jeff, thank you so much for hustling to the phone to get to us.
No problem. Happy to do it.
Thank you. Let's talk about what's happened here now. First off, was it a mistake for Bernie Sanders to say that Hillary Clinton was not qualified to be president of the United States, given, and I will play it in a second here, that is not what she said on Morning Joe or nowhere at this point that she's been quoted saying that?
Are you going to play it, or you want me to comment on it? I'm happy to do either.
Go ahead.
Let me comment on it. Let me look. I went to law school just like Secretary Clinton did. I know how to say something without saying it. And certainly the Washington Post, which ran a story with the headline that Hillary Clinton questions Bernie Sanders' qualifications. You may remember on CNN was reported on Wisconsin election night that the Clinton campaign's new strategy against Bernie Sanders was to disqualify him, defeat him, and reunite the party later. So the Clinton campaign and the secretary have been engaged in a campaign to suggest that he's not qualified in some way. And I think it was completely appropriate, if that's the kind of campaign they want to run, that Senator Sanders point out reasons why voters might view her as unqualified or disqualified to be president of the United States, including her support of the war in Iraq, her funding from major special interests, including Wall Street, and a host of other issues.
Look, I don't know why he's saying that, but I will take Bernie Sanders over Donald Trump or Ted Cruz anytime. So let's keep our eye on